Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. I am Billy Embody. Thanks for joining us. Excited for you guys to be here on this special Wednesday edition as we preview the Cotton Bowl between Miami and Ohio State. We will get to that in just a moment. But of course, we got to remind you guys before we get to our interview with Adam Lichtenstein of the Sun Sentinel, who covers Miami for them. We will be presented this entire Wednesday show by our friends at OPW Solutions. OPW Solutions, an incredible family-run business that can deliver great commercial services with integrity, with reliability, and with care. North Texas, maybe the entire state of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and beyond in 2026. Our friends at OPW Solutions are expanding their reach this coming year, and we're excited to have them along for the ride with us. And if you want to reach out and learn more about what they can do for you and your business, make sure you give them a call, 214-444-2305, or email them info@opwsolutions.com, or just check them out, opwsolutions.com. It's commercial landscaping, pressure washing, snow and ice control, and more. You can find it all with our friends at OPW Solutions. Now excited to be joined by Adam Lichtenstein of the Sun Sentinel. Adam, thanks for taking the time out of what is a busy time, media day around the Cotton Bowl for Miami and, of course, Ohio State, getting a chance to sit down with reporters ahead of this massive matchup in the college football playoff. We appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Billy. And, like you said, we're busy today, media day for both teams. A lot of interviews, a lot of rapid fire interviews. Got a bunch of stories up today. Just very busy, getting ready for the Cotton Bowl.
This Miami-Ohio State matchup, I remember obviously watching the Ohio State-Miami matchup, for the national championship, one of the best college football games I remember from my youth. Miami is trying to come out on the other side of it this time around. This has a feeling like a just jumbo matchup. When they did the reseeding for the college football playoff and kind of fix that angle of it, this is what they got. I think some of these games that we're seeing this second round or so of the quarterfinals for this college football playoff. What's Miami's mindset going into it now, having at least gone on the road in 100 versus 100,000 and taking care of business against a team like Texas A&M?
Yeah, it's funny. Like you said, I mean, Miami fans are incredible for this. It's not really a rematch of the 2002 national title game, but like it feels like it, because Miami and Ohio State played in like the 2000s, but like those are regular season games 15 years ago. Nobody cares about those. So everyone's really hyped about that. The Hurricanes themselves, though, are not. Like Mario Cristobal got asked about that at the press conference last week, and he's just like, "Yeah, no." He basically said that he doesn't care whether that's actually true or not. People can argue about that, but like he said, at least it's not. Nothing to do with the 2002 game. It's about the 2025 Hurricanes versus the 2025 Buckeyes. And, it's just, like you said, it's a jumbo matchup. I mean, this is the helmet game of not maybe not all helmet games. It's a pretty big helmet game. I mean, two programs with, I think 14 national titles between them. Like, this is a battle of two historic giants in this game. I think it's very, very exciting.
When Miami went to Texas A&M and played the way they did defensively, I look at what happened in that Ohio State matchup against Indiana, and I was thinking kind of the entire time, okay, you could see another blueprint just like that for this matchup between Miami and Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. Is that your initial feel on it when you knew this matchup was coming together once Miami was able to get that win, or do you see this one kind of looking a little different than what we've seen from these two teams in their last two outings as football teams?
Well, ideally for Miami, that would follow the Indiana print. No, I mean, like I was like going over like the Ohio State roster, and I'm like, okay, a Heisman Trophy finalist at quarterback. They have a 1,000-yard rusher at running back. They've got the best player probably in the nation at any position at wide receiver, and another one of the top wide receivers in the country. They've got an All-American defensive tackle, a great defensive end in Caden Curry, probably two of the best linebackers in the country, the best safety in the country. And I'm like, how? Like, no one can beat this team. And I remembered Indiana just did. They held them to 10 points. This is a beatable team. They can bleed. And Miami, they say deep travel. They've got a great defense. And if you can hold any team to 10 or 14 points, you can beat them. Now, happen? I truly don't know. I don't expect it to. I think Ohio State's a great team. I think they'll put up points, and I think Miami will probably put up some points too. I think they'll do better on offense than they did against A&M. It's obviously a huge challenge for Miami. Ohio State's an excellent team, and they've had a month to get healthy and prepare for this game.
And what are the matchups for you, one on offense, one on defense, that really strike you as, they should have an ISO type of camera on this matchup going into this one? Is it Jeremiah Smith versus one of Miami's best cornerbacks? Is it Francis Maui-Noah matching up against some of these Ohio State defensive ends? What stands out to you just from a pure one-on-one matchup perspective?
Yeah, yes to both of those, and more if you I would watch a game just with a camera on Jeremiah Smith. I watched him play all throughout high school, and I thought at the time that he'd start for 90% of college teams. As a senior, he could start for 100%. For Ohio State on day one, you can start for anyone. So I would watch Jeremiah Smith first. And he doesn't have the superstar lockdown quarterback. They're just having him one-on-one all night. I think whenever they match up with him, whether it's Frederique, or Xavier Lucas or Ethan O'Connor, those are capable quarterbacks that can slow him down. I'm sure they'll have safety help as well. Kobe Thomas has been excellent. Very good in the secondary. So that's obviously a huge matchup, like Jeremiah Smith versus the entire Miami secondary. And then on offense, I would probably say I'm going to cheat with Carson Beck versus Caleb Downs. Just can Ohio State replicate what A&M was able to do and totally shut down Miami's passing offense? They hold Malachi Tony to I think he had 22 yards at A&M, and 12 of them came on a pop pass that ended up being the game-winning touchdown. And then the other one, I guess, kind of like Mark Fletcher and the offensive line versus Aiden McDonald, and the run defense for Ohio State, because Fletcher was what carried Miami's offense against A&M for 70 yards, set up the game-winning touchdown, and Caden is one of the best run stoppers in the country. So if they can't get anything going in the run game, then they're going to have to rely on Carson to pass, which I think he can do, but I'm not confident that he will do. So I kind of cheated there, basically named the whole offense and everything, but it's a very interesting matchup.
And I think when you look at this matchup with Carson Beck and what he was able to do just from a pure game management perspective, I wonder if that can be replicated again against this Ohio State defense. That is one of my burning questions going into this one. I know many people are looking at Carson Beck to step up or make a play type of thing in this game. But man, Miami, that formula that they had last game, you could almost simplify it even more and figure, okay, they could probably have even more success with that route.
Yeah, it's possible, but I'm not confident that they can, because again, it worked, but they only scored 10 points, and they would have scored more if they don't have the crazy wind and they make those field goals, whatever. But and this game is indoors, so they don't have to worry about the elements. But they only scored 10 points in that game. They got enough to win, but it wasn't that much. I think they are going to end up needing Carson Beck to make some plays, and not just him. I mean, like we say Carson Beck, it's the whole passing game. It's Carson Beck, it's Malachi Tony, it's Keelan Marion, C.J. Daniels, JoJo Trader, Elijah Lawson. You can rattle off a list of guys who are capable. The question is, do they step up? And against A&M, really the only one who really truly stepped up was Mark Fletcher. Malachi Tony scored the winning touchdown, but he had, I think, at the end of the third quarter, like -1 receiving yards, and was bottled up whenever he tried to do the gadget stuff that they like to do with him. So they need that offense to come. They need to be multidimensional. They can't be one-dimensional. I think Ohio State's too good for that. I don't think they can ground and pound their way to a win in this game. If they do, more power to them. Then and Mark Fletcher's a great dude and a former Ohio State commit, but I just don't think they're gonna be able to do that like they did against A&M.
I could see where you're coming from on that for sure. And I think the playbook now has to be, okay, how do we get Malachi Tony going? Because that was such a, interesting aspect of that game where, he, and watching it on TV, I'm sure you watched it back, watching him be upset after that fumble was really tough to see. But, credit to Mark Fletcher and those guys for getting him back in the game to make the play that he did. But for Carson Beck, if they can get Malachi Tony going with, I think, some of those easy passes, and it's easier said than done against this Ohio State defense, but that is something that they've got to find a way to exploit and get going early on, or else it is going to be that ground and pound. And at the end of the day, indoors, Carson Beck has to make a play.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just first on you mentioned the Malachi Tony fumble. Just a side note on that, I don't know how many people know this. When that happened, me and a colleague of mine, Jordan McPherson from the Miami Herald, we looked at each other and our jaws had dropped. Not
Oh,
just because he fumbled, which is rare, but because if for people who followed his career and know about his high school career, when he was a freshman in high school, he had almost an identical play in the state championship game where his team was driving for a potential game-tying touchdown, and the ball got punched. He made a catch, and he was turning downfield. Ball gets punched out of his hands, and who recovers it but Reuben Bain for Miami Central, and that lost him the game. And he was in that game. He was inconsolable. And again, this is something that stands out. It was in my memory, but from that time, it was a cool moment from like a neutral perspective, from a narrative perspective. But one of the guys who went over to comfort him after that was Mark Fletcher, because he was teammates with Malachi Tony in that game. So I actually I asked Fletcher that, I'm like, that's what came to my mind. And he goes, yeah, and I think he said it on ACC Network that like Malachi told him, like, I can't believe I did it again. I don't want to let you down again. It was just crazy that, like I said, I'm like, it was too much narrative. I love a good narrative. That was too much narrative. So yeah, like you said, they need to get Malachi Tony involved. He has to have a bigger game. They tried a lot of those kind of short passes to him because, like I said earlier, the win to A&M was crazy, and they really weren't trying to move the ball downfield. Like, if you watch, there's a play early in the game where Carson Beck has JoJo Trader wide. He has a step or two on his defender,
yes.
and he chucks it downfield. And Beck said after, he's like, I thought that was a touchdown. He's like, I threw that. And I'm like, that's a touchdown. And the ball just got caught up in the wind and went way out of bounds. So I think after that, they basically stopped trying to throw the ball downfield. And when they stopped trying to throw the ball downfield, A&M was able to really zero in on Tony, and they would get the ball to him, and there'd be a defender right there. Again, that won't be the case because we're indoors on Wednesday, but they need to make sure that they do more than just bubble screens and short little passes to Tony. They have to get him going downfield. They have to get him, in the intermediate and deep passing game, which he is capable of doing. If you look at his PFF grades, like Tony has excellent grades at short passes, intermediate passes, deep passes. He can do it all. So they just have to get him more involved in a more diversified passing game, I guess.
No question, and it is a fascinating matchup with these two coordinators of Miami and Ohio State going at it and trying to figure out which chess pieces you can get involved. A chess piece that Miami won't have to motivate by any means, like they had the extra motivation from Texas A&M. But Reuben Bain, what's he been like? Getting to spend some time with him, around him for media day, and where his mindset is with Akeem Mesidor and him having created so much havoc last game.
Yeah, as far as I know, Ohio State hasn't, poked the bear like A&M did a little bit. And it's funny because the A&M offensive lineman, I don't think he meant anything by it. He probably thought it was a super anodyne comment. And Reuben Bain's just like, I took that like my Michael Jordan meme, like I took that personally. Yeah. And that, much to A&M's detriment. I don't, like I said, I don't think there's been any taunting, any kind of poking the bear like that. But I'm sure Reuben Bain, like you said, doesn't need motivation. I'm sure he's going to be fired up. Like, any game at this point could be his last for Miami. So I'm sure he is fired up. And the combination, it's kind of like, it's funny. So to kind of go on a bit of a tangent, I look at Bain and Mesidor kind of like how I look at Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. It's like, it's okay. If you have one superstar at the position, you can game plan for him. But then you have a second guy. Like, if you could do everything to cover Jeremiah Smith, and Carnell Tate will beat you. You can do everything to beat Reuben Bain, and Akeem Mesidor will get you. Or Keontae Scott will get you. Keontae Scott has 13 tackles for loss as a defensive back in like 10 games, which is crazy.
Nuts.
But yeah, Bain and Mesidor, that duo at defensive end, like, incredibly difficult to stop. Like, the only team that really did, I'd say, a good job of neutralizing it was Louisville, and that's because Louisville was just spitting the ball out immediately at, like, snap immediate for, like, on short little mesh routes, little digs and drags and stuff like that. So if you have to hold the ball for more than 2 seconds, like, you're in trouble against this Miami defense.
I did see Mark Fletcher in action in high school back when he was at Heritage his senior year. He went off for a couple touchdowns, I think, against Trinity Christian, but had a
That
big
sounds
game.
right.
Interviewed him. He was always just one of those class guys that you would expect to come through that Heritage program. They just produce them at such a high level, and Miami's the beneficiary of it with these guys and how they've been able to build this roster on the back of Miami and some of the not as talked about players in a sense, Miami being successful using the portal, but this is just a team built on the backbone of really, high level Miami recruiting evaluations and star power too, which doesn't get talked about enough. How is it being around so many guys that are legitimately playing for their city?
Oh, it's so cool. And first off, on everyone talks, oh, Mario Cristobal is a great recruiter, and he is, and he will land big time prospects. He landed, Francis Mauigoa, a 5-star top 10 guy everyone wanted. Landed Ruben Bain, a high 4-star who a lot of people wanted. Like Mark Fletcher, 4-star former Ohio State commit. He will land those high level players. But they've made some incredibly good evaluations and turned, guys who were not highly touted into starters and into good starters. Like I think of Inez Cooper, their right guard, who, he was a borderline 3-star prospect, and I say that on the low end of 3-star, not the high end. Like he was outside the top 1,000 on 24/7. Like not a super highly touted guy. And they went into Alabama. He was playing defensive line, and they said, "Do you want to play guard?" And he was like, "Yeah, like that's what I want to play." So they came in, they brought him in, and he was a starting right guard before the end of his freshman year. So that's a great evaluation. He's been a 4-year starter, and then you look at Ahmad Moten, a starting defensive tackle who was an All ACC caliber player. He was a 3-star. He was the other guy when teams were recruiting R. Mason Thomas out of Cardinal Gibbons. They were teammates, and Oklahoma got R. Mason Thomas, and that's worked out great. Miami got Ahmad Moten, and that's worked out excellently too because he's going into, I think he's in his 4th year, and he's been very good at defensive tackle. So they've been very very good at not just bringing in that extreme high level talent. They've made great evaluations and they've turned those players into quality starters, and that goes for guys around the country. That goes for guys in South Florida, like I mentioned, Ahmad Moten. They brought in other high level guys like Malachi Tony, as big of a star as he is, was a borderline 3-star guy. He was not a 5-star prospect. He was not Jeremiah Smith. He was good in high school, but I don't think anybody expected this. Like I expected Jeremiah Smith to be very good. I did not expect Malachi Tony to come in and be a top 5 receiver in the country as a freshman. I actually was kind of higher on Josh Moore, the 4-star freshman, because he's got the measurables. He's 6'3", he's fast. I thought, okay, maybe he's going to make an impact. But then you get to spring and fall camp, and all the coaches are like, well, actually, Malachi Tony is insanely good. So that's worked out pretty well. But again, Tony was not a 5-star can't miss guy. He was a fringy 4-3-star, depending on what ranking service you look at. Like good, but not like an elite prospect. And he's turned into an elite player.
It is just so fascinating to watch these two teams build their rosters and build them for the future. And I know Miami's had some turnover in that regard. We'll have to get you on after the season to break all that down. But Mario Cristobal has done such a great job with this program, especially turning the narrative that, especially after that loss at SMU, was already starting to get gassed up by some people, including maybe yours truly. But he's done a masterful job of putting this team in position to do this. And getting this right in November. And let's end on this before I get your prediction. We'll get you out of here. But what did you see from this team to turn that corner after a loss to Louisville and a loss to SMU, that you're sitting there as if you're a Miami fan, you're saying, I can't believe we fell for it again. And now here they are playing in the Cotton Bowl.
Well, coming into the year, I expected this team to be really good. I predicted 11-1 and a playoff spot. And well, they were kind of close to that. They lost 2 regular season games, but they made the playoffs and they've won 11 games. So I was half right. This team is really good. And I think those 2 losses they had, they were not against great teams. They weren't against horrible teams. Everyone kept saying, "Oh, they have these bad losses." They weren't bad losses. They were average losses to solid teams by 1 touchdown. 1-score games. Okay. But I think what really happened, and they've kind of talked about this in recent weeks, after that SMU game, because they started off super hot. They beat Notre Dame. They beat Florida, which looked better at the time. They beat FSU, which looked a lot better at the time. But then they go on that little kind of mid-season slump. And they said they had a team meeting after that SMU game where basically they watched a taster reel, like a highlight reel of all the good stuff they had done. And it's like Mufasa coming down, in The Lion King and saying like, "Remember who you are," and that's what they did. That's what they did. They remembered that they are a really good team, and that did the trick. Because since then they've been playing excellently. They beat up on bad opponents. They beat up on a pretty decent opponent in Pitt, and they went into Texas A&M, like you said, in front of 100,000 screaming Aggies, and they allowed 3 points, which is crazy. So they've turned it on at the right time. Like this is a team that, like, they're a tough team. They've got a lot of mental fortitude, I guess. Like, and you could probably gas up every playoff team and say that, because you can't really get to this point without having that. But the fact that they didn't just cruise. They didn't just roll 12-0, season and beat up on everybody and then face adversity for the first time in December. Like, they faced that adversity. They were fighting for their lives basically from that SMU game on. Because if you told me that after that SMU game, I'm like, they're not making the playoffs. Like, I read a story in The Athletic saying, like, Miami's playoff hopes at the time were on life support when they had just come off that loss to SMU, and I'm like, they're not making the playoffs at 10-2. They just went 10-2, and they didn't make the playoffs last year. They're not making it again. They're not going to make it this year. And that win over Notre Dame buoyed them more than their non-conference schedule did last year. And you combine that big win over Notre Dame with the fact that they were playing their best football at the end of the year, and the committee, in all their wisdom and their logic, all their logic that they used, and eventually the convoluted logic and the competitive pools and the back-to-back and the head-to-head and everything. Eventually they did what I think was the right decision and put Miami in over Notre Dame. And Miami has shown that they are a team that was deserving of being in, because they went into a hostile environment as an underdog and they won.
Who do you got? What's the prediction that's coming out in the Sun Sentinel?
All that being said, I think Ohio. Yeah. All that being said, and this is not a knock on Miami at all. I have Ohio State by a touchdown, 28-21. I just think they're too good. I mean, again, you look at the roster, and it's all American after all American after all American. They're such a great team. I find it. I'm not convinced of this. I'm not confident in this prediction, but Ohio State is just really, really good, and Miami's really good too. But I think Ohio State's just got too much this year. I'm not confident Miami can pull this off. They can. I wouldn't be shocked if they did, but it would be a mild surprise.
It's going to be such a great game. I think we're in for a treat in Jerry World. Exactly the type of game that Jerry Jones wants. And, of course, maybe he'll have Michael Irvin sitting next to him for just a cup of coffee before he gets down to the sidelines, I'm sure.
Before he's on all four on the sidelines.
Yeah. He's what, 10 toes, 10 fingers down with Mario
Cristobal.
So, look, Adam, doing a great job there at the Sun Sentinel. Sentinel covering Miami. We appreciate all the insights and looking forward to having you back on. Enjoy the game tonight, and Happy New Year.
For sure. Happy New Year. Thanks for having me.
And we appreciate Adam for stopping in with us here on All Access AM. Great guy in the industry to follow, especially if you are an ACC fan and, in particular, fan of the Miami Hurricanes, who are doing battle tonight, New Year's Eve, against Ohio State. I thought when we got Adam on, I was like, we got to get this episode out, but we wanted to stick to our Wednesday timeline here. And for good reason. We wanted to give you guys a little bit more to marinate on when it came to the matchups and get you guys something out on game day to really fire you up. And speaking of fired up, I'm fired up about what we're doing as soon as the clock strikes midnight with our friends at La La Land Foundation. No, not literally right at midnight, but that means 2026. That means a new year and a new opportunity for us to make our own stories with La La Land come together. And we're thrilled to do that with our friends at the La La Land Foundation. They have just such an incredible way of using kindness as that number one piece to guide them in their efforts to position youth leaving the foster system to be best positioned to succeed in life. That's something that they really are committed to at such a high level, and it drives everything that they do, is that kindness factor that they really want to use to guide them as they build this foundation into something that everybody should want to be a part of, whether you can support financially, whether you can support by volunteering or through events or in-kind donations or even corporate sponsorships. That's something they're exploring as well, and trying to grow the national footprint of this foundation through the La La Land Kind Cafe being that vehicle where you can grab a great coffee and a good meal, and you can do it while knowing you're supporting kindness. It's not the foundation part of it. It's not charity. It's not this. It's not that. When you walk into a La La Land Kind Cafe, it is all about kindness. And I think that's the biggest thing that I take away from spending time at La La Lands whenever we get a chance to go as a family. It just leaves you feeling even better than ever. So we appreciate our friends at the La La Land Foundation for continuing their partnership with us. We're really excited about that, hoping to get some more exciting news out about what we're planning to do in the future with our friends at the La La Land Foundation and impacting the youth of tomorrow. Speaking of tomorrow, there is going to be no tomorrow for one of these two teams, Miami and Ohio State, in the college football playoff. This is a matchup that I am so excited about, and just listening to Adam talk about it and the bracket impact that this game has on, and all four of these games, of course, have on who's next up in this college football playoff in the semifinals, in the Peach Bowl and the Fiesta Bowl. For the winner of this Miami Ohio State game, you get the winner of Ole Miss Georgia in the Sugar Bowl tonight, or tomorrow night, I should say. And as the Cotton Bowl is really kicking off these four games in the quarterfinals, and then we'll have the Rose Bowl, of course, being played in the afternoon on New Year's Day, and we'll have the Orange Bowl being played at 11 a.m. Central Time on ESPN, with Oregon and Texas Tech playing that one out. Of course, two teams just traveling all the way across to play that one in Miami, kind of like Alabama playing Indiana in the Rose Bowl. But of course, you got the Big Ten tie out with the Rose Bowl in that one. But still kind of funny stuff from time to time here, and a long layoff for some of those teams. So don't sweat the travel out west or east for either one of those teams. But when you look at this Miami-Ohio State matchup, it is such a huge deal from the standpoint of what does Georgia or Ole Miss get on the other side of this? Do you get a team that's faced an SEC opponent and is now clicking on all cylinders in Miami, and they have beaten Ohio State now, and they got to really be feeling good? Or do you get the Buckeyes, the defending national champions, who come in with their own reason to be confident, even though they did not get that win in the Big Ten championship against Indiana? We're going to find out if this Ohio State team is a different version of last year's team, which came out and said after the Michigan loss, we're not going to lose again this year. And they went on to win the national championship and did so in impressive fashion. And I think this Ohio State team, I don't know if they have been as tested as they are going to be against Miami on New Year's Eve in the Cotton Bowl outside of their game against Indiana. And that's the truth. And Indiana plays a style that can be very similar to Miami. And in a sense, though, Indiana has the skins on the wall of being more consistent at playing their game and getting opponents down and keeping them down than Miami has been this year. The good news for Miami is they are playing some of their best ball, and they are really operating at a high level. And that's why I am going to pick Miami to win this game. Obviously, I think it's going to be close. So if you're betting this one and kind of taking a shot at trying to figure out who's going to win this game, the line currently sits at 9.5 points favoring Ohio State. The over-under in total set at 42.5. So they're projecting a lower scoring game. Just reading some of the commentary from this Miami side of things, you look at all of the challenges that Ohio State presents: Julian Sayin, Bo Jackson, Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, all those studs offensively. That's really where this game rides on it for me, is can Corey Heatherman's defense and a Keontae Scott be a difference maker? Can you see a Reuben Bain or a Justin Scott step up in those situations and be those game wreckers that we've kind of seen as of late in this defense? And Akeem Mesidor doing what they were able to do against Texas A&M. Can they continue that against a very well-recruited, well-stockpiled Ohio State offense? that is the key. If you're looking at a large group battle, I asked Adam Lichtenstein about maybe a one-on-one matchup. And I know at times the audio was what it was until we got it right. But you look at what this group from a Miami defensive perspective has to accomplish. The number one thing Miami needs for this game to potentially go their way is they need Ohio State's offense to be at least curtailed. I don't think they're going to be able to hold them to 3 points. I hate to break it to Miami fans listening. I'm not going to go into this game thinking that. I could see a world where this is a lower scoring game for both sides of this matchup in the Cotton Bowl. But I am not going to sit here and say we're going to have one team under 10 points like we did last time out against Miami, with Miami taking on Texas A&M. This time around, you're going to see a little bit more points on the board. It's a track that's built to put up some points, some excitement. I think this is a golden opportunity for guys like Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Malachi Toney, and CJ Daniels to do what they can do and be difference makers, because this track is so fast. And that's something that I've seen through years of watching games in this stadium, whether it be high school football, whether it be college football, primetime early season matchups, whether it be the Cotton Bowl. These are the types of games that you'd expect is really thrillers. The Cotton Bowl's just been so good since it's gone over to this stadium, in my opinion. And so we'll be interested to see how this one pans out with points on the board. Vegas does not think it's going to be a really high scoring affair. I am in that world too. I think if Miami's going to win this one, it's going to be a 24-17 type of win. Yes, that's crazy, a touchdown spread. I just think one of these teams is going to show up and win it by a touchdown. I'm picking Miami in this game. Like Adam, I don't have as much confidence in it and where I am with it, but I like what I saw out of Miami against Texas A&M and just getting farther away from that win over Texas A&M for Miami and hearing some of the people who were there talk about it. The wind is really something that just, you could kind of put it into words or whatever, but then once you hear it and hear more and more about it, it really impacted that game. And it really impacted how they were able to operate offensively. And obviously the kicking game for both teams were a mess. But Miami has that edge no matter what going into this game, you've got to believe. So I like Miami to get this win. I think it would be a huge deal for the ACC. I expect this game to be close and Miami pull it out in the end. And we'll see if they can then use that and continue their march on in the playoffs. But Ohio State's a really good team. And the X factor here too is Ryan Day taking over the play calling and Corey Heatherman kind of coming off a game where he's been in a groove and he's been able to disrupt a quarterback like Mason Heinchel in the regular season finale. And they've done a lot of good things in November as a defense. So lots pointing towards Miami playing their best football, and them getting that confidence boost at Texas A&M has to be something that at least on their side of things, you would think that they should be feeling themselves well enough to be able to go into this matchup and feel really good about the direction of their team and them getting this one done. So we are looking forward to that one. I tell you that much. 6:30 p.m. Central Time on ESPN in that matchup. And it just can't get here soon enough. Just hours away. We're out here on the West Coast. This is pre-recorded for you guys since I misspoke on the Monday pod. 5 a.m. Pacific time would be a tough one to get up for with all the events we have going on covering SMU out here in the Holiday Bowl. But hey, who knows? Maybe one day we're big enough where we're doing some events around college football playoff games in the ACC. We're just getting started here. And there is another bowl game, of course, to keep an eye on New Year's Eve, and it is getting underway quickly today if you're listening to this on New Year's Eve, and that is Arizona State taking on Duke in the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. And the Sun Bowl is really a great bowl game. It is in El Paso, Texas, but it is a really fun bowl game that they put everything into. I've just heard so many good things about this bowl game. It is at 1 p.m. Central Time. So if you're watching this show, get ready because it'll be on before you know it, as Arizona State and Duke will do battle. A team that went to the college football playoff in Arizona State last year has now seen a lot of changes around their program with Sam Levitt leaving the program and some of the things that they're dealing with. But when you look at Duke and what they've overcome to win an ACC championship, what a wild story for Manny Diaz. And just getting to spend some time with him before the season even played out, you can see why his name was even kind of mentioned in that Penn State coaching search for a cup of coffee. You can see why he's still talked about nationally, even though this Duke team, and we rode them pretty hard as far as their non-conference performance and what they did in league play to just get there enough to be in the conference championship game. The system was the system for them. They took advantage of it. But for this Duke team, it starts with Manny Diaz. And the funny thing is he spoke about Darian Mensah and what it meant to go out and get a quarterback like that and to spend and for it to be publicized and all of those things. And he said to me and a couple others in the preseason, this is the expectation. This is what we want every year. We want people to know we're going to have a good quarterback here. We're going to invest at that level. We believe in doing that. And that is something that has obviously paid off for them in terms of a bowl game and an ACC championship. Now it's so weird to kind of talk about it that way at 8-5, but it's true. And they deserve all the credit for playing it all the right way and it paying off for them. But your floor is always going to be higher when you've got a dude at quarterback, and they do have one in Darian Mensah. And I think at times he's been inconsistent. At times it hasn't been good enough. But for the most part, he's been an NFL prospect, that is really being watched closely. I'm not surprised he's coming back to school, even in a draft class that maybe he could have, shined in shorts and t-shirts and really wowed some people with his charisma and kind of what he's all about. I know he's really on the right track to being well prepared for that process whenever it comes his way. And he can really jumpstart even more buzz around his future with a strong showing against Arizona State. And Arizona State is going to start Jeff Sims at quarterback with Sam Levitt being out for much of the year, really with injury and things like that, but is now onto the transfer portal. And with Darian Mensah, he's going to be playing in the game. He's going to have to shoulder the load of stepping up because Duke is going to be without guys like Chandler Rivers at cornerback and Vincent Anthony Jr., another really good veteran defensive end. So they're going to have to deal with some of that that we've seen in the bowl games. But looking at Arizona State, they kind of had to deal with the Kenny Dillingham, Michigan stuff and calling out local businesses in a sense to step up and support Arizona State. So it's kind of been a weird year for Arizona State and sitting at 8-4, 6-3 in the Big 12 and a team that didn't necessarily live up to expectations, but now they get a chance to play it out in the Sun Bowl. I'm probably going to go with Duke in this game. I think they do a really nice job of obviously having their guys at least ready to go for the most part. This isn't an Arizona State team that necessarily should scare anyone getting off the bus, but Duke is going to be without some key players, and I mentioned Chandler Rivers and what he can do in shutting down a side of the field. So that's going to be something they're going to have to overcome. But that is why they play the games, and we will see how that one goes with Duke being favored by 3 points in this one. From what I've seen, the game is 1 p.m. Central Time on CBS from the Sun Bowl. Storied game, great setting. Even some of you will have your thoughts on El Paso, but Duke has a chance to show that for the first time this year, one, you can get a win over the Big 12. You can put an exclamation point on your season that you've had, which is an ACC championship season. Pretty incredible stuff for Manny Diaz, former Miami coach, to get that championship at Duke and do it the way he did. But nevertheless, they have a chance to finish this out kind of the right way. I think they will. I'm going to pick Duke in this one. I'm going to pick Duke and them to cover. I like Duke to win, a game that is, set with the total at 49.5. Duke going into this one, I can see them winning this one. Let's say, I think 27-20, kind of a little bit of a healthy touchdown there to get the win. And I think Duke, showing what they did against Virginia from a defensive perspective gives me a lot of faith that they could do it against Arizona State, even with the guys that they're missing. Bowl games are weird. Arizona State's dealing with some guys that they're not going to be with as well. So we'll be tracking all of that. But look, this is going to be a shorter show. This is New Year's Eve. This is a show for you guys to just talk about the two games that the conference has going on. We will get back to our basketball breakdowns. Okay. On New Year's Day, we'll talk about the first 2 days or 2 nights of ACC basketball play and what all that means and the early takeaways from what's going on in ACC basketball. We'll talk about Miami, Ohio State. We'll break down Arizona State and Duke and how that one went. And of course, we'll take a look at the rest of the ACC bowl schedule with SMU taking on Arizona out in the Holiday Bowl in San Diego, January 2nd. So that'll be the another game to break down for this bowl season, and that'll be the one that caps it alongside Wake Forest taking on Mississippi State. So we will have a ton to get to on a New Year's Day show. I still don't know what time we're going to run that show at. We might do it as a lunch. It might be something that I run on 10 a.m. Pacific time, and it's out for everybody on lunch. And you guys can enjoy it on New Year's Day as you're taking in the college football playoff games if you don't want to listen to some of the commentary, or maybe it's a lead up for you guys. So look, we appreciate you guys listening to this edition of All Access AM. We really appreciate our sponsors, OPW Solutions, and our friends at the La La Land Foundation. Please click that QR code, or scan it, I should say, if you're watching on YouTube or your TV. You can do that as well. And subscribe to All Access AM. We appreciate all your support that you guys have given us. We're really excited about 2026 and hope you guys enjoyed this edition, the last one of 2026. What a last one of 2025. What a crazy year. But we appreciate you guys being with us, and enjoy the Cotton Bowl, enjoy the Sun Bowl, and enjoy the next 48 hours or so of college football. It's going to be a blast. We'll be there to follow it with you guys on New Year's Day in 2026. We'll see you then. I'm Billy Embody.